Brad Olsen es un escritor e investigador de antiguas civilizaciones, de objetos fuera de tiempo conocidos como OPARCH, e investiga el tema de los gigantes en el pasado, los conocidos en la Biblia como Nephilim, híbridos de una especie mitad humanos, mitad Anunnaki, alienígenas, que poblaron la Tierra hace miles de años atrás. Explica en un capítulo de su libro, Más allá de lo esotérico, escapando del planeta prisión, los hallazgos que logró descubrir tras sus investigaciones sobre esta especie de seres híbridos gigantes. En una entrevista con Michael Sala, trata el asunto del grupo conocido como Instituto Smithsoniano, que realmente es un equipo de agentes del gobierno secreto que, como he dicho en anteriores ocasiones, se dedican a buscar, rastrear por todo el planeta ubicaciones donde están estos seres gigantes híbridos, en estado de letargo, en galerías subterráneas, junto a tecnologías muy avanzadas. Y cómo los ocultan, se los llevan a laboratorios y bases subterráneas de las élites controladoras, así como esqueletos y cráneos alargados de estas entidades, de híbridos, son ocultados para su estudio y para la ocultación de esa parte de la historia humana que nos habla sobre un pasado muy diferente al cual nos han mostrado en los libros de historia. Averiguó que, si bien el descubrimiento de esqueletos gigantes en antiguos cementerios se mostró ampliamente en los periódicos a finales del siglo XIX, el tema se ocultó por completo poco después del cambio de siglo. Durante más de 100 años, organizaciones como el Instituto Smithsoniano tomaron rápidamente el control de los lugares de enterramiento, silenciaron a los arqueólogos e impusieron un manto de secreto sobre el paradero de los esqueletos gigantes recuperados. Olsen analiza los relatos de gigantes en los textos de civilizaciones antiguas como Sumeria, el encubrimiento de las excavaciones modernas de esqueletos humanos gigantes y por qué el Instituto Smithsoniano ha suprimido el tema. Explica la variación en el tamaño de los gigantes y responde a la idea de que visitantes alienígenas, como los Anunnaki, además, crearon gigantes de diferentes tamaños mediante experimentación genética. También Olsen aborda las afirmaciones recientes de gigantes vivientes que se encuentran en cámaras de éxtasis en todo el planeta.
So it shows that these elongated skulls, literally found around the world, must have been from a human-like race of giants, because 30% larger skull, 30% larger body, it just goes to show. And you can see in that distribution map, it's truly a worldwide phenomenon where these were found. So it's not a one-off, it's a many-off. And here's the other thing, Michael, these bones are still continued to be found. When I was down in South America 4 years ago, we went into some museums and they would display these elongated skulls. They just, hey, this is part of our heritage. They considered them royalty, and they were buried in royal tombs. And you can see displays with these elongated skulls. They're not trying to hide them. In fact, in Paracas, Peru is the best collection of all. And Brian Forrester, he lives down there and he knows where the graveyard was, and he finds some of the implements, and he's even done some DNA studies that show that they had a mother's human DNA but an unknown father. So that's quite interesting, and that kind of corresponds with what the Bible says, is that these men of renown found the earth women attractive and they mated with them. So this seems to be perhaps how the Nephilim were a species of the Anunnaki, the offspring of these giants. 100 years ago, where they discovered all these giants. And it turns out there are effigy mounds in southern Wisconsin near the shore of some of these lakes. And that's the famous dig there, which was done by professors of Beloit College. I mean, they did everything textbook, the way archaeology should be done. And if you go to the headline of the Wisconsin newspaper, they were announcing it as this incredible find of giants. And like so many cases of professional archaeological digs, you have the Smithsonian coming in right after the announcement goes over the wire, and here in this case, the New York Times is picking it up. And the Smithsonian shows up. They're like Johnny on the spot, showing their FBI badges. Say, well, we're taking over here. We outrank you guys. And as in most cases, those archaeologists would have to defer to the Smithsonian and say, well, but please keep us abreast of your findings. And almost routinely, they would go back to the Smithsonian and say, well, what else did you find? What are some cultural traits of these giants that we are starting to discover? And routinely they'd say, we don't know what you're talking about. There are no giant bones here. And they've denied it ever since. So it is what we call Smithsonian Gate in this country, where these out of place artifacts, upas or giant bones, just go missing. They do not want to deal with the subject. And so that has just stoked my interest even more and got me involved in giving talks on the giants at conferences and having a chapter in Beyond Esoteric called Suppressed Human Origins, because they lived on this earth just as we did in prehistoric times. And there's a big story that's not being told about who and what these,
such as the Freemasons, that apparently also have this goal of monopolizing esoteric knowledge. And I know from reading the Radu Cinema book series, the Transylvania series of books, that the Freemasons played this role of every time there's a kind of breakthrough in scientific knowledge, that their people go in there and they use their connections to get high-level access and to kind of keep it all secret and to control it and extract whatever benefits for themselves. So, yeah, the Freemasons, what do you think of them and their role in this whole cover-up of this forbidden knowledge?
And we know that they're a secret society. What's the nature of a secret society? To keep secrets. And I'm glad you brought up the Freemasons, Michael, because out here in the West Coast, there have been a lot of findings of giants, not only out on the Channel Islands, hundreds of them found. Some of them underneath a awning where they were roasting their midget mammoths. So this could only have occurred in the last ice age. Also, up in northern Nevada was a giant freshwater lake. It's where I've just relocated next year to a ranch in northwestern Nevada, is in the basin of Lake Lahoshan, this giant freshwater lake with caves all around it, that they found these red-headed giants. They were so unusual because they were mummified, much in the same manner as Egyptian mummification, but they had created their own implements, their own tools, their own hunting gear, even duck decoys that were so amazingly unique to them. They have to call them by their own name, and it's the Lovelock culture, named after the biggest cave called Lovelock Cave just outside of Lovelock, Nevada, where they found dozens of these mummified red-haired giants. But the Masons come into the picture in the 19th century when they're digging them up, actually in 1933, so this would be the 20th century, and they were known to have taken them out. And I go to all the museums in Nevada trying to find any remnants of the giants, and they usually just laugh me out. Oh, you're one of those guys, huh? But there are records of these giants being taken to Masonic halls, just in the same way that Geronimo, the famous Native American warrior, his body, his skull was dug up, and it's reported to still be at Skull and Bones in Yale. So these secret societies have a fascination with these with these giants and these mummies that were found in the caves, and it's almost like a death cult. And you see this in primitive cultures around the world. For example, in Hawaii, which I'm sure you know, with the Heiau temples and the whole concept of mana, that you could steal the chief's energy once you killed him, and the Native Americans would wear the scalps of their enemies to get the mana of these fallen warriors. So it's kind of a reoccurring theme around the world that they're trying to capture the energy or the essence of these giants after they've lived, and keep them in their close quarters behind lock and key in many cases, and I've not been able to get close to them. Now, my colleague and friend David Hatcher Childress, who's in a lot of the Ancient Alien shows, he's tracked a few down, and he has confirmed to me that he knows that the Masons have collected some of these giant skulls, and he wrote about them in his Lost Cities of North America book, if anybody wants to.
There's that phenomenon of these space arcs that are being discovered or being revealed by various sources, JP being one of them, and that they report, JP, Jean-Charles Moyen, Elena Danam report seeing these very large sarcophagi or these stasis chambers where they saw giants in them, and they're estimated to be around 10 feet or more in size, and these are described as the crew for those giant space arcs that can take hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands at the very least. That these are operational craft, and that the crew are sleeping in these stasis chambers, but that their consciousness has been transferred into an ordinary human body, and they're living as star seeds, and they at some point presumably will awaken. So that's going to be really quite something when these space arcs suddenly start activating and start popping up, and the crew start appearing in their original avatar bodies as these giants.
So someone's got to know that they're there. And I would say that those same someone are probably also part of this cover-up to just erase the history of anything giant related. And another piece of the puzzle was what Alex Collier said when asked the question, who owns the Earth? Alex was doing a Q&A at the Mount Shasta Summer Conference last summer, and he gave the very succinct answer, the Anunnaki. So according to him, they're still around and they're still running the show. And maybe the people that we think are running the world, the Rothschilds or Rockefellers, are more like the colonels and majors in the hierarchy here, and the real generals are these off-planet types that are protecting their own, these stasis chambers. And isn't it interesting that they're all built for giants? Not you and me, even though I'm a tall guy, they're way bigger than me. And it seems that they're the real rulers of this planet Earth, and why so many things just don't make any sense. Why the narrative gets steered towards the way they want us to think, not based on the evidence that we find here in the case of the giants.
Well, I know that in the ancient world, the topic of giants was very well known, and it's all over the artwork. Sure. And there's one Sumerian or Akkadian, cuneiform tablet that shows the god king Shamash. That's the Akkadian name for the sun god to the king. So that the first midget on the left is a normal sized king of Earth, of that era in ancient Sumeria, and behind him are two minor gods, and they're kind of, you can see that they're a little bit larger, but Shamash must be about 25 feet tall in comparison to these other guys. And I think maybe this was the whole hierarchy thing, that you have a gradation in terms of, the biggest of the giants were avatars for the Anunnaki leaders, or these senior extraterrestrials, and the kind of smaller giants, the ones that are around 10 feet or whatever, that they are kind of like avatars for lesser Anunnaki or lesser extraterrestrial beings. So I thought that image of Shamash, the sun god, tells a lot about the hierarchy.
It sure does. And if you could pop it up one more time, there's another detail and that is the two animals underneath the giant seat, which appear to be what, lions, would you think? Some kind of animals. You can see they're, or perhaps a hoofed animal, but they are in accordance to the size of the people on the left, not the size of the giant. And there's another very famous portrait of Gilgamesh, and he's holding a lion in one arm like it's a house cat. And you can clearly see it's a full-grown lion, which are about as big as humans. So that's a good tell that the artist who represented here was doing the exact sizing, because those animals are in relation to the other three, not to the giant king there, who must be about 15, 20 feet tall. If you look at his kneecap comes up to their shoulders. So clearly a giant, and wearing a headgear, which is also common with a lot of the pharaohs, that they try to disguise their elongated heads.
Enki and Enlil. Enki is described in various texts as the Anunnaki scientist that created humans. He was the geneticist. He was the commander of Earth and responsible for the Earth experiment, you know, the genetic experiment, creating these different bodies. So I'm just going to put that image up of the different giants that Enki created. Those different giants. I mean, they performed various functions. I mean, the bigger ones were avatars for Anunnaki. You know, depending on your status in Anunnaki society, you would be given one of the kind of like larger avatars, and if you were like in a giggy worker, you might be given one of these 20-foot bodies or something like that. And then you have the smaller, like the hybrids, like the size of Goliath and Og, that these were also created as kind of like human kings, but they were also created by Enki. And of course you have the humans at the very end, but Enki somehow thought that bestowing intelligence on the humans was actually a good idea, that there was something about them, that they carried a potential. And so he nurtured that, and of course his half-brother Enlil was like, took the attitude that no, these workers, they're there to serve us. They just, just shut up and don't create any problems. And actually, that's what's described in these texts. The Atrahasis actually describes that the humans were making too much noise for Enlil and his faction, and so Enlil said, "Well, let's wipe them out, start again, and just dumb them down." And Enki didn't want to have anything to do with that, and kind of like so there was that dispute between them.